Hey there, Darkstar here. I was going to make a charter service private Cessna 172 G1000 focused video as a companion to the other one I made. That's more the G3000s. Okay, so first of all, charter service charter service private missions are pretty limited in scope. So right now I see them up here in the US, and there's some over here in the UK, and there's really none anywhere else in the world. So if you had the misfortune of placing your plane somewhere else, which I think I did as well, we're gonna have to pay to move it here. Okay, so let's pick. So if it has a red dot on it, it should be around the current times. You see this one's at 3:30 p.m. and this one should be around 3:30 p.m. These can vary. There's 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 2:30 p.m., but all the ones with the red dot should be pretty close to the time you've dialed in here. So, and ones that don't have a red dot might have a red dot as you dial the time around. Like, see that one right there? But I think that's just because the time selected here is coincident with the mission time. I don't know if it changes. Let's see. That's 11:56 a.m. 12:28 p.m. Yeah, so that's I guess it changes a little bit within that window of time, but like that one's pretty narrow, so okay. But as best I know, that's what the red dots mean. We're gonna try to go this one. Let's select it. We have to be careful about what plane we pick here. Okay, what I always recommend doing is go in and check your runways. Runway 9, okay. Runway 9 is 4,000 feet. That is more than sufficient for this plane. Runway 20. Runway 20 is more than sufficient for this plane. Make sure it's not 20W, because that would be a water runway. No, I think this one would be a very long flight. Hour and a half. Yeah, that's okay. We'll sim rate in this one. Okay. The other thing you want to do, either here or in the next screen, I always just do it here, is put in your cruise altitude. Let's put in 40 for 4,000 feet because these are flight levels. So you want to send that at least to ATC. I usually just pick the first one. You can also, at this point, fine-tune these. Like, let's just pick straight here. Like I'm going to remove these waypoints. I didn't do this in the other one, but so we're going to remove some waypoints here. That's okay at this stage. Even though if you go here and you try to edit it, it says mission flight plan locked. So this might change in the future, but for now you can edit it. You can do whatever you want here. Okay, let's send it again. We've got our 40. Now this doesn't mean ATC is going to assign you 4,000. You're requesting 4,000. Depending on whether you're flying primarily east or west, they might bump you up 1,000. Right? And I think also some en-route minimums come into play. So if there's an arrival that has a higher required altitude, or I think it tries to base it on terrain, but don't trust it, it might bump up your altitude as well. Okay, this says min transfer cost, but that's not going to be the one we end up taking, I'm almost sure, because we want a Cessna, right? Okay, G1000 is the one I'm going to take. Okay, let's manage it, make sure it's, I would only do this about every 12, 16 hours. I did it here just to make sure it was up to date because I haven't flown this plane in a long time. You don't necessarily want to be all the way full, but you don't want the minimum fuel either, so take a little extra. But that's just extra weight, right? We don't want to deal with that if we don't have to. Now you could go in here and file if you didn't do it in the prior screen. You still get a chance here. And then a good practice is to always do it at the beginning of the mission as well before you really do anything else once you get in the plane. And I think I'm just going to do some skipping because I don't want to do, well, I don't know what should, let's do the whole thing. Do not skip the cutscenes though. Don't skip the cutscenes. That is broken right now. I mean, these are pretty simple to start up, right? What am I clicking on? Goodness, I think I just popped out a bunch of breakers. Don't pop out your breakers. If things aren't working, check your breakers. I gotta get this off. Let me pre-flight my cockpit here because I had this on. Okay, we're good. Let's we'll go and request boarding. Don't skip this cutscene.
Ground service. This is flight DSC 7014 parking 2. Clear to start passenger boarding.
Receive, Captain. They're on their way. Have a good flight.
Pouring liquid everywhere on my desk here. Brilliant.
Ladies and gents, be welcome.
Quick favor, Captain. I'm expected in Kearney ASAP, so if you'd speed it up a bit, I'd appreciate it.
Sometimes I want to throttle those people. They really need to change the messages. Unless they're trying to teach you to deal with rude people. Okay, let's see. Let's get the battery on, I guess. Let me think. Yeah, I can go ahead and do all of that. We'll get the standby armed. We'll get the beacon on. We'll go ahead and go nav on. Let's make sure our mixture is set. I'm gonna pull it out just a little bit here. Want to crack the throttle in just a 1/4 inch. You don't really have to, but that's what you're supposed to do. Fuel pump on, and then start. That's right, left, both mags on, and start.
Good afternoon, Cap. Today you've got the pleasure of taking Madam Parsons to Kearney. She's close to one of our top clients who booked the flight for her. Provide her with the finest service on behalf of our company. I know I can count on you. Have a nice flight.
So, I should have made sure my fuel was all good before we started.
14 Golf traffic. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is taxiing to runway 9er. 14 Golf traffic.
Okay, cabin power on. Beacon nav is on. Let's go ahead and go flaps. Okay, we'll go full rich. Here. Let's get our avionics on. And normally in a small plane, in a real plane, in real life, you do the run-up, where you kind of test things out, test our brakes, all that stuff. If you had a co-pilot here, you would have them test their brakes as well.
14 Golf traffic. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 taking off runway 9er. Departure to the north. 14 Golf traffic.
So let's do a pseudo run up. We're gonna go to
Good afternoon to all passengers. This is your captain speaking. On behalf of First Class Wings, I would like to welcome you on board flight DSC 7014 bound for Kearney. Estimated flight time to Kearney is 1 hour 54 minutes. To prepare for takeoff, please ensure your seat belt is fastened tightly, your seat is in the upright position, and your tray table is securely stored. Thank you, and get ready for a wonderful flight.
Okay, so about, I don't even remember what it is, but you go to some RPMs, I think 15-ish, and then you want to turn off one of the mags. So it's on both right now, so we'll go that one, and we should see an RPM drop, not too much, but a little bit, and then back to both. Should come back up, and then go to the other mag, and you should see the RPM drop, and then back to both. That's part of the run-up. Okay, we're here. We're going to go ahead and get landing lights on and strobe before that we enter the runway. I'm going to leave my taxi lights on for extra visibility. Okay, we're going to get out here on the runway. We're going to get our final setup done. Okay, so we want to get some kind of initial altitude. We want runway heading locked in. I just right-clicked it. That's radios. Okay, all these buttons, right? So one of the things we're going to want to do once we start using our autopilot, we're going to want to get flight level change mode. That's going to let us select what climb speed we're using, and we'll look at that in a minute. And then we'll want to go heading mode first probably, and then we'll arm nav and catch our magenta line here. So if we zoom out, I want to make sure our flight plan looks good. Yep, it's not going anywhere crazy. Sometimes it will. And if there's too much stuff on here, just lower the detail like that. Let's put our brakes on for a minute as well, and let's look at a few other options here. Okay. So one thing you might notice is my map probably doesn't look like yours. What you want to do is go to map options and select terrain relative. You're probably on topo mode. So relative shows you like green if it's within like 1,000 feet below you, and then it'll go, I don't know, orange, which is danger, and then red is you're probably going to hit it. You can fly over just barely red terrain, but you don't want to be descending. But you know, always be looking out. I wouldn't fly over red unless I could see and knew I was going to clear it. You can turn on weather here as well. Traffic, go back. There's not a whole lot of options here, so I think we're pretty good there. But yeah, definitely declutter your map when you're not using it. If you need to find something nearby, that's where you'll want to go back up. And then I think if you go to menu also, there's map settings. So you can hit enter on that. You can use these scrolls down here. You want your orientation track up or not. And then I have north above 1,000 nautical miles. So as I zoom out, it'll automatically go into north up mode when it has 1,000 nautical mile range. Terrain display, relative, again above that. Might actually want topo above that even. Maybe that's the other way around. I don't know. Well, we'll leave it the way it is. Topo scale. Track vector, that's pretty cool. We'll see that in a minute. That's like your, however far you have selected here, it's where you're going to be in 60 seconds. So you can see your turn radius and stuff like that. And selected altitude arc, that you want on. So let's turn that on. Okay. And then we'll clear, I think. Yeah, enter. Okay, that's on. Yeah, that you definitely want. I'll show you how that works in a minute as well. Okay. Now there's going to be other things you can do here, like map mode, waypoints, aux stuff. You can go in and you can set up all this stuff. System setup, your flight plan, nearest whatever. So you can find nearest airports if you need to. I think if you press and hold clear, maybe that's not on this one. Maybe it's on a different one. When you're getting ready to go, one thing I'd recommend you do is hit proc, select your approach, enter. So where are we going? So runway 20 here only has visual. So if we're going to stick with, if we wanted an RNAV approach, we could maybe we could get O2, but let's stick with visual. A lot of your runways at this point are going to be visual, so enter on that one, and then scroll down and pick straight, enter. You can do minimums if you want. Scroll on forward. Now at this point, because you have a flight plan, you don't want to activate it. You don't generally need to manually activate it unless in real life ATC, you might be in the, at some point in a flight plan, an ATC would say cleared for approach via whatever waypoint. You might activate your approach at that point. We're just going to load it here. Okay, do note this. It is not a safe approach. You have to own the approach. It's a visual approach. This will fly you into mountains and trees and all kinds of stuff if you don't watch it. Okay. You can get to your flight plan just by hitting flight plan here. At this point, you would need to right-click the little dial, and then you can dial forward on waypoints. Like say we wanted to skip this waypoint and go directly to Pune, you could do that, and then you do direct to, and then you hit, it'll already be entered here. You could also enter one if you wanted. Then enter and then activate it would go there. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to clear that out. And then if we hit clear on the waypoint, we could delete it. We don't want to do that, so we're going to cancel. You can add waypoints here. It's kind of a pain. You would dial this in to start entering a new waypoint. Like, well, whatever, and then you'd enter it. This one has dupes, so you'd pick which one you want. Obviously we don't want any of these, but we're just going to pick one, enter it, and now we've entered that waypoint, and our flight plan is crazy. Okay, so now we have one we can delete. So okay, we entered the wrong one or whatever, go clear, enter, and now it's gone. Some basic flight plan stuff. Okay. You can see down here, this is going to be your VNAV profile. What waypoint it's currently selected at to be, which is that final waypoint right here. White is what it's thinking it's going to be, and blue is what's in either the loaded, in this case the approach. So it wants to be at 1,444 feet here at final for your final approach fix. So that's what it's locked onto here, and that's what it's going to compute a 3-degree slope to. We'll see that in flight. When ATC tells you to set your transponder, that's where you would go here. You'd pick code, and you can dial in your transponder code. We're going to leave it at 12 for now. This automatically selects either 7,000 or 1,200, the VFR frequencies for you. So that'll automatically pick it. If ATC told you to ident, which the in-game one doesn't right now, that's what you'd use that for. This is the whether it's standby on or altitude. So at this point we want to put that on altitude. Let's see, what are some other good options? CDI, if you don't see magenta here and GPS and that's all selected, like if you're seeing green, you're on the wrong mode. You'd hit this CDI button. You want it to be tracked to GPS coordinates that you have here. If you're doing an ILS, then it'll either auto switch or you'll switch it into localizer mode. you can pick different things here, like if you want a map, either an inset map over here, or a map on the HSI like that, you could turn that on. I prefer not to have those here. PFD options, synthetic vision, that's where you're going to set up your synthetic vision. Wind, I like option 1, we'll see that up here when we go. It gives you independent crosswind and head or tailwind information, and these have different presentation modes, so you can try them out. DME, sure, turn it on. Bearing 1 or bearing 2, sure, you can turn those on. Like you can set it to either be an ADF or the GPS one, which we're going to be using so we don't need it, or you can set it on like your Nav1 radio. So if you're going to monitor your progress with VORs as you go, you can put that up here, and it'll show you some information, I think up here, and it'll also show you the bearing needle up here. Standard barometer, if you're climbing high enough, you probably won't ever in a 172. I guess you could in other countries that have lower transition altitudes. Altitude units, that's where you're going to pick inches or HPA, and you could also have a meters option here if you want to see your altitude in meters. Back, we want inches right now. This is your timer, so you can, I think, dial that forward and start a timer, stop a timer. And then also your VREFs are going to show up on here, and got them loaded here as well. So you can see these are on, that's what that means, they'll show up there. And then nearest, if you had an emergency and you wanted to go somewhere else, you can see stuff there. So I really like terrain relative mode. I like having the altitude selected arc. And again, we'll see that as we climb out and descend. Wind on, all that kind of stuff. Okay, I think we are ready to take off now. Now, I have auto mixture on, so it's going to automatically control my mixture. I would say, at least in your early days, that would be my recommendation. That's in your settings, assistances. If you know how to control your mixture and you like doing it, then great. Okay, so Cessna 172, so we just go full throttle. Watching our airspeed, making sure it starts working. If you leave your pitot cover on, your airspeed's not going to start working, and you should be braking about right now and figure out what's going on. Right. I'm going to wait till about 65 here to rotate, and then we're going to climb out at 75. There we go. We don't have any landing gear. We do have our flaps down, so I'm going to pitch up here to about 10 degrees. Basically, the way I learned it is you put the horizon on the hood there. That's basically good enough. Now wind's a little crazy, so.
Approach Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is type Cessna Skyhawk, 1 miles east of 14 Golf 900. Request flight following.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, approach. Squawk 4122.
Okay. And your co-pilot should automatically put in your squawk when you acknowledge.
Squawk 4122. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014.
So we'll see that come up right here. There we go, 4122.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014. Radar contact 1 mile southeast of Oscar India 79er, 1200. Altimeter 299er8.
Okay. Is this where we want to use that trim? And
Roger. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014.
We're not going to follow the blue
Summit
gates.
Delta Sierra Charlie
We're going to follow the
7014
magenta
contact
gates.
approach on 126.35. Good day.
So what we want to do here is intersect this magenta line at about 45-ish degrees.
126.35 for Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014.
Okay, we're going to do all this contacting.
Approach Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, 1700.
Okay, do you see
Summit
the
Delta
blue
Sierra Charlie
altitude arc there?
7014. Approach. Altimeter 29908. Radar contact. Continue. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 contact approach on 126.1. Good day.
126.1 for Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014. Approach Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 2000.
Nope.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014. Approach. Altimeter 29908. Radar contact. Continue.
Okay, we're requesting IFR clearance.
Approach Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, 2 miles northwest of Oscar India 79er, 2200. Request IFR to Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo, ready to copy.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is cleared to Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo Airport as filed. Squawk 4122.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 701, 4 cleared to Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo Airport as filed. Squawk 4122.
Okay.
Summit Delta
the
Sierra
heck?
Charlie 7014. Read
Oh
back
my
correct.
God, this thing goes on forever
Radar
and ever.
contact 2600.
Shut up.
Altimeter tree 000, turn right heading tree 55. Resume own navigation. Climb and maintain 4000.
Turn right heading tree 55. Resume own navigation. Climb and maintain 4000. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014.
Okay, will they shut up for a minute?
Summit Delta
Oh
Sierra
my goodness.
Charlie 7014 contact Cleveland Center on 127.9er. Good day.
Okay, this is where we're going to manually bring up the communication window. I use backslash, hit acknowledge handoff,
127
close the
decimal
window.
niner for Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014.
So what we're not going to do is contact them again until we're closer to our destination. Okay. So I call it parking ATC. Now they are shut up and they won't bother us. We can fly at any altitude we want. You can't get too far off of your flight plan or it'll fail the mission, but ATC won't bother you. So, but do stay close to your flight plan. So there's always a difference between this flight plan and what's in here, right? So I don't follow the blue gates, right? I follow the avionics flight plan. So that's what we're going to do here. Okay, and what I'm going to pause here so I can show this without it like constantly breaking me. But if you look right here at 33, right, there's a little magenta tick there. That is our wind adjusted heading. You can see right now we've got a 16 knot crosswind from the left and a 7 knot tailwind. Okay, so even though we're pointing at 323 degrees, our actual course is 33 degrees. So if we wanted to follow this arrow, like, you know, once this line is lined up here and you wanted to follow this arrow, you put this magenta tick on the arrow, not your heading. Okay, that's your wind adjusted course. So it's kind of cool that it has that. Okay, so I pause. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go autopilot on and we're going to start off in roll and pitch mode if you haven't done anything else. That will automatically trim the plane out, and now we can turn off autopilot, and we're still trimmed essentially for this speed at that roll. Well, it doesn't really trim for roll, I don't think. It just holds it, but it's going to trim for that pitch, right? Which is, trimming basically determines your, well, it's not exactly this, but for a given trim setting and configuration of the airplane overall, that is going to prefer one specific speed. Okay, so like if I reduce my power, so like let's say we're around 85, right? If I reduce my power setting the nose is going to drop now, and it's going to it'll drop faster than it should and pick up more speed than it wants, but then that picking up that extra speed as it drops is going to cause it to start to pitch up again, and eventually it's going to settle out around that 85 mark, right? So here it comes pitching up, right, and you can see it slowing back down, and it'll kind of like you know, roller coaster for a while. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back. Pretty high power. We're gonna, and let's look at some of the other features here. So we're gonna go let's go autopilot on again. Okay, and now we're going to engage, well, let's engage heading mode, okay? So heading mode is going to hold this heading. So if you right click this, it'll pick whatever your current heading is, and then we can kind of turn it a little bit, right? And you can see it turning the selector here as well as a line here that it showed as we turn. Now, if we wanted to follow this magenta line, we want that little magenta tick to be lined up, not our heading. So let's go a little bit to the left here. That's going to pull the magenta line around as well, and now we're going to be more closely aligned on our heading. We're a little bit to the right of our course. You can see the magenta boxes here. It is our actual course that we've selected, and now we're basically flying right along beside them because the magenta mark here is lined up with this arrow. And if we want to get closer to those boxes, we'll need to go a little bit more left. We'll go a little left. So heading mode is just going to try to fly the plane on whatever heading you've selected. It doesn't automatically account for wind. You have to do that. Okay. Now, the other thing you can do is arm nav mode, which is going to try to use this course to fly the plane. If you are not near this course, it won't activate. Right now we're very near the course, so as soon as I turn it on, it's going to activate. It might bank left a little bit unless we get a little closer, but I'm going to do it here, and I think it'll bank left a little to close faster. It often banks too much left, and so you're really better off either being further away and setting a 45-degree intercept to it and let it catch it when it gets close there, or get closer to it yourself and then activate nav mode. But we're going to do it here and see what happens. So this switch from heading to GPS, we can see it's banking over way too far to the left. And we can see altitude selected is blinking because we're closing on our 5,000 feet that we've selected here. Let's go ahead and do this.
To all passengers, glad to be your captain today. First, I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of First Class Wings on Flight DSC 7014. We are currently cruising at an altitude of 4,500 feet at an airspeed of 80 knots. It's 4:02 p.m. and are expecting to land in Kearney approximately at 6:13 p.m. local time. Current temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. If the weather cooperates, we should get a great view of the area as we descend. I'll update you before we reach our destination. Until then, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight.
Okay. So now let's talk about that 60-second vector. That's this cyan line here that's showing where we're going to be 1 minute from now because we selected 60 seconds. You probably see it wiggling back and forth as the wind varies. It'll adjust for it and try to get back on course. There it's bending over. This little green thing here in the middle is your flight path vector. That's where you're actually flying towards. So we're pointed this way. So we're going to have a left crosswind of 11 knots here, and that's blowing us off to the right. So flight path vector is deflected off to the right. So when you're approaching an airport and you want to come down at that airport, you want to put this green thing right on the end of the airport. That will automatically get you down there at the correct you know, vertical speed, taking into account your actual speed here and everything. Let's see, what else can we cover here? You do have these quick reference things here, like this is your ground speed, if you have it on there. Your desired track, your actual track, so those should be coincident if you're flying the right way. And your estimated time en route, I think that's to the next waypoint. So this is showing we're 10 minutes from that waypoint. Okay, let's sim rate up. 1, 2. And just to show you that ATC like isn't really involved, let's climb up to 8,000 feet. So now we're going to do flight level change to show that. And now this has a cyan mark on here. That's our desired airspeed. We can click these to bring that down. We could bring it down all the way to VY, which is our kind of optimal climb speed. But that makes us slower over the ground as well. So sometimes you want to pick a faster speed to climb at. You're not going to climb as fast, but it's called cruise climb. So you can pick a speed that's closer to your cruise speed, climb a little bit. We can even add a little power here. You see we've got a little buffer in power, and as we climb more and more, we're going to advance. We're going to want to advance that throttle more and more. Keep our RPM up. And also, as we climb, we'd want to be leaning out, right? So if you're doing automatic mixture, you don't have to worry about it. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm going to leave it. But otherwise, you would be leaning out the mixture as you climb. So flight path vector above the horizon, we're climbing. Below the horizon line, we would be descending. Magenta marks on here are the flight director. That's where it wants the plane to be, which it currently is. And the yellow ones are kind of where your plane is currently pointed, right? So that's where, if you didn't have autopilot on, you'd essentially want to line these up with the magenta markers, the flight director, to be doing the same thing that the plane is doing right now. I'm going to put the sim rate back down and get autopilot off, and then we'll deviate from that plan, right? So now we're not doing what the flight director says, so we're not climbing at that speed, right? We're faster than our marked out speed. We're not climbing the way we want. So one thing we could do is just manually fly the flight director. Just put it about there, and it'll automatically adjust that flight director to kind of tell you what to do. Now that depends on the system knowing what you actually want to do, right? It doesn't know that you're wanting to land right now or do something else. It's only doing what the computer is telling it to do. So autopilot back on. Now once that's all lined up, engaging the autopilot shouldn't jerk the plane around, right? So you can use that to kind of get the plane into a situation where engaging the autopilot won't do crazy things and sometimes knock you out of the sky. Now, I'm a dum-dum, and what have I done? I left the flaps down. We're technically overspeeding the flaps. I'm surprised it didn't call me out on it. Okay, flaps up. And now we should be climbing faster even. That was a test. We're also in the air, so we don't need landing lights and taxi lights anymore. We can get those off. We're not an airliner. We don't turn them off at 10,000 feet. You can take them off once you're kind of, well clear of the runway. And, you would turn them on for visibility, basically, if you're worried about it being hard for other planes to see where you are. Those lights can give you a little more visibility. If you don't know how, I highly recommend occasionally looking at these and learning how to read them. It'll be fun for later. So this is your altitude, right? This is your attitude indicator. It's basically this thing. Like right now we're pitched up 5 degrees. That's what this is showing. These are your bank angles, so that would be like 30 degrees right there. Which is about the maximum you generally want to roll over for normal maneuvers. For a standard rate turn, it's even less than that. It depends on your speed and everything, but it's usually like kind of or more closer to this mark. Okay, autopilot's automatically turning us just a little bit to get from this waypoint to the next one. And then our speed, right? And then this white bar is usually your flap speed. So you want to get your, you can start getting your flaps out at 85 according to this. And you don't want to get below the green here, which would be about 50. That's where you start getting into stall problems. This reads kind of like a clock. So we're at 8,000 feet right now. So this is at the 8, right? And then this is at the 1,000. So this would be 8,001. If the big hand is on the 1, that's 100 feet, 200, 300, 400. Little hand reads out in thousands, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. This marker here is what tens of thousands you're in. So if this was over the 1, we would be at 10,000 plus 8,000. So we'd be at 18,000. Good luck getting there in a 172. But it's good to look at them. You can reference this to see what you're actually at and kind of learn how to read those. Another thing you want to kind of learn to do occasionally is check that your battery amps eventually fall to 0. Like if we turn off our alternator, now we're using our battery, see? So if we drain that battery, the plane's not going to run real well. It's going to die. So, and then when you get it on, what should happen is it'll start charging, so you'll see positive amps as the battery charges, and then it'll go to 0 when the battery's fully charged. You can see your fuel flow, your EGT, which is important when you start manually leaning the engine out. Our fuel quantity here, so we're using up left tank fuel, and we have a little more in the right tank. So we could go to right tank and then even that fuel out. But as you switch that lever back and forth, like if you have it on right and you run out of gas in the right, it's going to run out of gas, right? It's not going to automatically switch over to the left. So okay, let's get our sim rate back up. We're just going to cruise here at 5,000 for a while. Let's check out our flight plan. And we see our top of descent now is in 1 hour and 15 minutes. You can also have a timer here if you want. So that's 4x. That's 8x. Now, a lot of times at 8x, the plane will bounce around on you really hard, so you got to watch it. You've also got to, so right now we're kind of at max, right? We're running full out on the RPM, almost in the red. Our fuel flow is very high. We'll get there faster, but we might want to pull this back just a little bit, maybe to the top of the green. We'll slow down a little bit, but we'll we'll be a little bit more fuel efficient. Again, you can see our heading is crabbed into the wind here, 23 knot crosswind now, and that magenta marker is showing our true course. So we're 58 minutes to Pune. Missed it in the other one, so I'm going to do it in this one. But before you get to your top of descent, you want to have your next altitude selected, which is probably whatever ATC is clearing you down to, or whatever you were at, right? So let's pick, I don't even remember what it was, 6,000 to start with, we'll say. See if it says up here, 4,000. Okay, we'll go 4,000. That's a good place to start it, is whatever you had requested. The other thing you need to do is you need to arm vertical navigation, or VNav, or in this case VNV is the button label. We'll see that show up here as VPath on the annunciator. White means armed, green means active, more or less anyway. I think there are some weird exceptions to that. But. So autopilot, flight director, heading mode, altitude hold, nav mode, which can be either GPS or localizer, I believe. Vertical navigation, approach mode, back course, which I don't really use, vertical speed mode, which is going to make the autopilot climb or descend at some specific vertical speed that you control with these buttons. Vertical speed to me is better for descents, and flight level change is better for climbs, because with flight level change you can set a minimum speed that you're willing to go, and it'll hold that speed. Also over here, so we have a TOD time and we have a TOD marker on our flight plan here. Zoom into that a little. That's nice weather here. Nice clouds anyway. I guess there's no weather, nothing showing up on here. I wonder if this works yet. Okay. Yeah, I guess that'll let you change if you wanted. Clouds. There we are, low fuel on the right. Sim rate will churn through that fuel pretty quick. The low fuel warning, you're not out of fuel yet, so we'll let them get even, then we'll put it on both. I'll have to watch for it this time. I meant to do that before. Okay, and one thing I didn't do earlier that I should have done as soon as we took off is get pitot heat on. Our airspeed is working, so it hasn't frozen up, but let's go ahead and get pitot heat on. You should do that when you're ready for takeoff. Minutes to top of descent. Now when I file a lower altitude than I'm flying at, I like to get in contact with ATC kind of right at top of descent, because they think I should be at 4,000 already, so I'll say, hey, I'm at 8,000 descending to 4,000, and tell them we go, right? So it usually works out pretty well that way. Also, this is a bit of a sharp corner coming up. I don't like to take sharp corners at high sim rates, so you're better off slowing down a little. Now remember, this is your 1 minute mark, but that's not real-time minutes, that's flight minutes. We're accelerated right now. But I'd say about a minute from the waypoint is a good point to slow down a little. We're at 8x now, so that's 4x. And 2x. We'll leave it at that. Back to 8x until we get closer to TOD. So, you know, monitor your instruments, make sure everything's okay, keep an eye on your top of descent, keep an eye out for other traffic. And that's about equal, so we're gonna go both right on cue. Okay, top of descent in 1 minute. Slowing sim rate down a little. 30 seconds, sim rate 2x. I'll leave it at sim rate 2x. For me, things start to happen pretty quick, so you might want to get on. Make sure your altitude's dialed down and VNAV is armed. VPath is engaged, and we're on this magenta mark right here. Right there. Now, our prop RPM is, we're overspeeding, so we need to pull the RPMs back a little bit, right? Which will also save us fuel. have to go screaming down on descent here, but we can. You should probably reduce power before you hit TOD, technically, but... Okay, and then there's our altitude selected arc. So this is the point at which we should hit 4,000 at our current speed and descent rate, right? If those are going to be changing, this is not going to be accurate, or be a little less accurate. So keep that in mind. Like if you're about to pull some power, you're going to hit 4,000 before this mark. If you're adding power, you're going to overshoot it a little, and it'll push out as you pick up speed too. Those are the things it depends on. Okay, so let's get back in contact with ATC.
Minneapolis Center, Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is passing 5,400, descending 4,000.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, Minneapolis Center, altimeter 29905, radar contact, continue.
Okay, that's here.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, you can cancel IFR. Continue VFR to your destination.
Minneapolis Center, Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014. Cancel IFR at this time.
Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, IFR flight plan is canceled, radar service terminated. Squawk 1200. Maintain VFR. Frequency change approved. Good day.
If you like a challenge, turn off the assists. If you want a little extra guidance, turn them on. Okay.
Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014, 5 miles southeast, 4,000. Inbound to land runway 2. Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic.
Okay.
To all passengers, just a quick update. Antrim County has granted us permission to land.
Dial
Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened as we start our descent. Thank you.
Need a little more power.
Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is on final runway 2 to land. Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic.
It's been a long while since why are we stalling at 60? Okay. I don't remember what RPM you're supposed to be descending at. Let's pick 1600, I guess. Whoa. That is some crazy winds. I think that's part of it. Okay, we're gonna go autopilot off here.
These jumps are not normal.
Me either. What in the world? The wind has gone crazy in this game. And I think we're on sim rate also, which didn't help. That was crazy, crazy wind is what that was. So if you have the runway and the wind is bad, come in fast. And you may not want to use flaps. We're gonna see if we can get this thing down. Okay, I need to get some trim here. My goodness. I can't trim this thing hard enough. What is going on? There we go. I think. Okay. Wanted to get on my yoke and rudders instead of the flight stick. A little hard to transition there. Okay, again, green thing on the end of the runway, right? It's currently to the right of the runway. So that's not the way we want to go, so we need to turn a little left. If the runway looks straight, you're pretty good. If it starts, you know, angling off to the left or right on the far end, then you need to line up with it better. Okay, that's a little fast, so we're gonna go. I'm gonna try to pull the power back here to something reasonable. Wish we had a windsock here so we knew which way the wind was going, but it says 2 and 2, right? Or 2 and 3 now. 2 knot crosswind, 3 knot headwind. So maybe that's okay. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and go a little bit of flaps there. Oh, wrong one way. It switched it to 2. So I needed to come in the other way. I was afraid it was going to switch it to 2. Ah well, we get dinged. But you gotta pay attention to what runway you announce when it goes visual. And like I could have just switched it, right? I mean, you can request it on the communication panels. You can say, "Hey, I want a different runway," and it'll give it to you. So I wasn't paying attention to that. The winds are just insane though. They've got the horrible wind turbulence thing back. I'll use this video to kind of report that, I think. And then when we got close to the ground, they were much more reasonable.
Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic. Summit Delta Sierra Charlie 7014 is taxiing to parking. Kilo Alpha Charlie Bravo traffic.
I forgot my lights, but we can get strobe off now. Probably shouldn't have left fuel pump on the whole time.
To all passengers, welcome to Antrim County. Local time is 5:54 p.m. For your safety, the captain has requested that you remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until we come to a complete stop and the seatbelt sign is turned off. Please make sure you take all your belongings with you when you get off. On behalf of the entire company, we would like to thank you for choosing First Class Wings. We look forward to seeing you again and wish you a pleasant stay in Kearney.
I'm really in a hurry. When do we get off? Good thing this flight went smoothly.
I thought you said it was the most horrible thing you've ever experienced a minute ago. It was pretty bad. That's because I didn't pay attention to the landing area, and that's because the wind is insane. Well, hopefully that's helpful in the avionics and navigational aspects. Not bad. I think that pays for itself. All right. Talk to you later.